Okay, welcome everybody to the latest Knowledge Network on Climate Assemblies workshop. With the theme of today's workshop is climate assemblies within organisations. Um, we've noticed that it's not just governments who are using climate assembly technology and approaches. We've already witnessed civil society organisations running them in a similar way to governments in terms of engaging the wider population. But I think we're noticing something slightly different at the moment, which is that organizations from across different sectors have started to use assemblies to help them with decision making internally. So this isn't always just with their own members. It can be with people from outside, as we'll see during this call. But I think the thing that we would like to explore is the way that assemblies are being used by different types of organizations to enhance their decision making, to enhance the participation of different actors within different actors who engage with that organization. And so in order to do that today, we brought together three examples. The first one we're going to hear about is about the use of assembly technology by pension funds. This isn't just specifically on climate, this is actually a broader around sustainability. The second we're going to be looking at is a public authority, the City of Lyon, which has used an assembly to bring together public servants from across the public administration to consider the way that it delivers its work around climate. Then the third area we're going to be looking at is the way that universities have been using assemblies to engage different parts of their community. If we weren't looking at climate and we were just thinking more generally about citizens' assemblies, we'd also could have included organisations like museums that have been using assemblies to consider their relationship with the wider public. At least there's two in the UK. There's one just started at the National Gallery. There was one in Birmingham. I know there's been some in Germany. And we could have included the example of some cooperatives and other organisations who are starting to use assembly processes to improve their already existing democratic structures. So I think there's something really interesting for us to explore here. And what we'd like to do through this call is to get a sense of why this is happening, what's happening, and the kinds of opportunities and challenges that we face as a community in this area. So the first part of the call will be us offering you these sort of 2 or 3 cases, and then I'll have a short conversation with the presenters, and then we'll go into breakout groups where those presenters will be in different breakout groups, so we can do a bit more of a deep dive, asking what those challenges and opportunities are, and what we as a community can do to take this forward in an effective and sustainable way. So I'm really pleased to be joined by 4 great speakers. Emmeline Cooper, who is from Cranfield University, who'll be talking about the pensions work. Isabelle Nisson and Clémence Wendling from the City of Lyon, and Chloe Santoro, who stepped in at the last minute because sadly Emily Frankiel is sick at the moment, and I wish her well. But Chloe and I will have a little bit of a conversation about what's happening at university level, not least because my university is going to be starting a climate assembly. We start in its first session in January, so I have a particular interest in that. So without further ado, I've asked Emmeline to kick us off with some insights into what's been happening in pension funds. Please add any comments or thoughts in the chat. We know some of you have been involved in the very projects we're going to be talking about, or other projects as well. And it will only be those people who are on camera who will be captured. So don't worry too much about that unless you are really worried about privacy issues. But anyway, let me pass over to Emmeline. It's a real pleasure. Thank you for coming along, and please tell us about why pension funds are interested in this, what kind of things have they been doing, and whether or not there've been any impacts. Over to you, Emmeline.
Thanks very much, Graham. I'm just going to share my slides. And I'm hoping that's visible for everyone.
Yeah,
great.
Perfect.
So my name's Emmeline Cooper. I'm a Senior Research Fellow and Lecturer at Cranfield University. I'm also currently working with Nest Pensions in the UK to designing a member assembly for them. But the project I'm going to talk about today is the original work that I did in the Netherlands for Pensioenfonds Detailhandel, which is the retail sector fund pension in the Netherlands. And we designed a project called the Participant Dialogue, the Deelnemersdialoog. We're going to talk about about that project and how it worked and what the outcomes were. Okay, so the Participant Dialogue, as I mentioned, it was a deliberative mini-public approach to engaging pension scheme members in the responsible investment strategy of a pension scheme. Now, I'm not going to talk, because we've only got 10 minutes, I'm going to talk a huge background about it, but I find pension schemes incredibly interesting institutions because they are very influential in the way in which capital flows are made across the economy, and where they invest and how they think about investing, whether they think about it in a responsible way, whether they think about it in a sustainable way, has an impact on finance. So I think they're very interesting institutions. So we designed a deliberative mini-public that for Detailhandel, within that understanding of that context, that pension schemes should be thinking of themselves as important investors who should very much reflect the interests of their members because they are influential. And I'm going to talk about the project. There's two sort of stages to the project. I'm going to spend most focus on the first stage, which is the participant dialogue. And I delivered this with Professor Rob Bauer, Remco van der Stoep, who's also part of this course. It'd be lovely to talk to him as well. And this call was part of this as well, along with the Sortition Foundation and Energised. We also had Graham was involved as an external advisor, along with other external advisors who are coming from finance, Matthias van Dijk, Caroline Flammer, and Laura Starks. And we then extended this model with a wider membership survey, which is still in play at the moment, so it's not concluded. But I would like to talk a little bit about that because I think it reflects a really interesting extension to it. And that was delivered with Professor Paul Sleets and Dr. Bram van der Croft. So just to give a bit of background about what the origins were behind this project and the justifications and rationales behind it, I did some work on pensions and participation deliberation in my PhD, which Graham Smith was actually my doctoral supervisor for that. And it started off with the understanding that, deliberative democracy, participatory democracy is often conceived of as an alternative to representative democracy in the public sphere. But if you look at the way in which pension schemes are governed, they're actually governed under trusteeship, which in many ways it takes the problems of representation and makes them even worse, if you want to put it negatively, because trustees by definition have no obligation to engage with their publics and to understand their interests. A trustee is legally responsible to consider the best interests of others with prudence and loyalty and care, but with no understanding or need to understand the interests or preferences of those who they're acting on behalf of. So it struck me that when you start thinking about the implications of the institutions and the way in which their investment strategies are important and consequential, trusteeship seems to be a really kind of an odd way to govern such influential institutions. And certainly an argument could be made that trusteeship needs to be enhanced in some way. But the problem is when you come to sustainable investing, responsible investing, it's actually really complicated. The academic evidence on it is very mixed. You can say that broadly speaking, if you take into account responsibility issues or sustainability issues, they're broadly speaking not going to have a negative impact on financial performance. That's my interpretation of academic literature. But to be honest, the evidence is still being made and created at the moment, and the debate is very active. And it's not to say that even when you have the sort of big picture conclusions like that, you can draw from maybe meta studies. Actually, when it comes to individual investment decision making and the parameters that are being considered within the specific portfolios, there are still trade-offs that need to be made. And some of these trade-offs are quite difficult. You know, how are you going to trade off an expected financial risk-adjusted return against the idea that you might be able to contribute to a local community, or you might be able to provide finance to people who may not get finance from other places, and that might have a really great social impact on that community of entrepreneurs. These are all different types of outcomes that you need to sort of trade off against each other. So the complexity of sustainable investing, which includes climate but also takes into account other factors, is a really big problem. And it's even worse because actually it's difficult enough for professionals to manage these decisions, but essentially the retail investors, the beneficiaries, the ordinary people like you and me who have occupational pension schemes, we don't really have a great understanding of it either. We do have our values though. We do know what we want and the type of world we want to live in, but the kind of technicalities of it are not well known. Alongside this, you have pension scheme regimes that are constructed in social policy. We've largely experienced a period of privatization over the last 30 years. So people aren't able to rely on their state pension so much. They need to rely on their occupational pension to provide them with the income they need in retirement. And in many regimes, the ability of participants to choose who they have their pension provided with is really, really limited. It's in sort of theoretical terms, it's a limited exit option for beneficiaries. And so that makes the whole problem even worse, because here you have trustees who don't really understand the best interests, don't really understand the views and preferences of their members on complex issues that are hard to make decisions of in markets that aren't functioning well. And so in theoretical terms, this leads to kind of knowledge asymmetries, as economists would talk about it, and most of the literature on the governance of pension schemes is influenced by economic thinking, where you've got some misaligned preferences between those of the beneficiaries and the trustee boards, creating forms of agency risk. But from a political science perspective, which probably people in this network are more familiar with, we have a problem with legitimacy. How can they go ahead with these types of strategies, involve complex trade-offs between financial and non-financial values when they don't really know what their beneficiaries and their members think about it? So the outcome of that is a weak member focus and a lack of knowledge. Okay, I'm going to have to race through this. I'm going to race through the stuff that I know that you're all going to know really, really well, which is we did a mini public. And this mini public had many characteristics that are shared by lots of other different types of mini publics. It's sortition, that we involved experts to bring in an informing lens. We had a space for deliberation. We had professional facilitators to help make the dialogue inclusive. It was informed by the kind of thinking that I'd done in my PhD. And we produced recommendations within a report which the pension scheme had to respond to. So I think people in this network will kind of understand that as a concept. Here I talk a little bit about some of the good practice sort of principles that I developed before we did the project to help guide the design. And again, many of you on this network will be familiar with these principles and their importance when it comes to understanding deliberative mini publics. I don't need to run through them and tell you what they're all about. But one thing that's different in this project to how deliberative mini publics are delivered for public authorities is that I've been thinking about how you can actually use these ways to help people articulate value. So we're kind of thinking, okay, what does it mean for a pension scheme member to articulate the type of value they want from their pension scheme? And this may be financial value. Well, it will certainly be financial value. We all want like a comfortable retirement. But when it comes to sustainable, responsible investing, value will be considered more broadly. It'll also be, what kind of world do I want to live in? What kind of standard of living do I want to have for myself and future generations? And so to bring in a kind of a different type of discipline, stakeholder theory, value and stakeholder theory is basically, in essence, what does a good deal look like? And in this sense, a good deal might be financial and non-financial. Now, economists would think of it as the utility function or the utility of the member, but that's simply about financial value. This is about non-financial and financial value integrated together. So what did we do? The focus of the remit, which you'll all be familiar with as a concept, will be was what should we focus on in responsible investing? So it was all about, okay, we're going to take this responsible investing strategy, we're taking this seriously already. And in fact, the pension scheme itself had done amazing work prior to this, reaching out to their members through surveys, with Rob Bauer and Paul Smeets working on fantastic surveys, informing the trustee about preferences. So it's not like this was, they were very great organisation to work with because they were very member focused already. But they could see how the surveys had their limitations, and that this was giving them a more informed perspective in kind of fish skin terms of what would the microcosm of the memberships respond to us when asked about responsible investing, when they're actually better informed about it. So we use some classic techniques and ideas about how we could engage people in this, thinking about how they could think about their future, how they asking them about their values, facilitated deliberation. We brought in experts from industry. We also asked the pension scheme themselves to highlight three trade-offs that they thought were particularly pertinent to their investment strategy, because we wanted to kind of basically lean into the idea that responsible investing and sustainable investing isn't a straightforward matter. And it's not a straightforward matter for trustees, it's not a straightforward matter for executives, and it's therefore not a straightforward matter for beneficiaries and members either. But that doesn't mean that we can't get some views on this or some recommendations. It's just complicated. That's what it is. So we, like I said, we had a sortition method, and we recruited 50 people. We didn't use usual socio-demographic sortition quotas. We also did something slightly different, which is we, in terms of the sortition, we recruited pensioners according to their percentage in the population, but we changed the sortition quotas for active members and non-active members, because there are actually more non-active members than active members. And the view was taken that it would be important to have those present in the assembly who are actively contributing and paying in will therefore be most affected by the types of policies that the Assembly would be having an influence on. So that's a slightly different approach to the way sortition is done in public governance. We also made sure that the Assembly had the dialogue had a mix of views towards the attitudes and a mix of views towards the environment and the economy that reflected the Netherlands as a whole. So we didn't have a self-selection of people who made particularly pro or particularly anti sustainability. I know I'm coming to the end, Graham, so I'm going to quickly get So I'm going to, 49 recommendations were produced. I'm going to go straight to impact, okay? This is how the pension scheme responded. I'm not going to read through them all, but some themes were highlighted that they had maybe not prioritized quite so much before, or gave them opportunities to rethink. So they were going to emphasize more focus in their investment strategy on human rights. We're going to look at establishing a new plan for real estate investments. We're going to tighten our dialogue, our focus on exclusions when dialogue with companies is unsuccessful. So that was really interesting. We're going to continue with the climate action plans. They're continuing with work they've already done. They want to measure impact preferences of their members. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And we want to continue other collaborations and communicate well to our members. So this is their response to the 49 recommendations. And if you're interested in the recommendations, look at the report. They're really fascinating. I'm really proud of the way they handle some of the complexity in sustainable investing. But what they've done since then, which is the second stage of the project, is they've actually taken the idea of impact investing, which was raised in the Assembly and in the dialogue, and they've surveyed their members to ask them whether they'd like to increase or decrease the impact investment in their portfolio. They committed to implementing the answer from this survey prior to receiving the results. The question was, do you want to stop, maintain or expand impact investing from the current point of 1% to an increase of between 2 and 5%? And around 40% of respondents said they wanted to increase impact investing, which will be implemented because it fits within the rule of responding to the most commonly mentioned option. So that is currently in process at the moment, but that's showing how this Assembly has helped create informed preferences, which has led to a connection with a wider membership and a commitment to increasing that particular type of investment approach. And I'll stop there.
Emmeline, thank you so much. That was that's so interesting. It's sort of I just want to say, I mean, you raised it. I was your PhD supervisor, and the fact that you just talked about this in abstract and you are now actually doing it is just I'm really I find that amazing. So thank you so much, Emmeline. We will have a chance to talk some more with Emmeline and the others after the other two presentations, and then she'll be in one of the breakout groups should you want to explore this and other areas of private sector engagement more. So thanks, Emmeline. We're going to move on now. Could you unshare your screen, please,
Yes,
so that we
sorry.
can? No worries, no worries. We're now going to move on to hear from Isabelle and Clémence from the City of Lyon. Isabelle is the project manager for culture and ecological transition and resilience, and Clémence is a special assistant to the Deputy General Director, General Delegation Urban Planning. Gosh, it keeps going. Real estate and work. So that's a long title. But I think the important thing is they were really key in organising an assembly within the City of Lyon. So the city, we're used to public authorities running assemblies with the wider public. Here's an example of one where they've actually done it within the city itself. So why did you do it? How did you do it? And what sort of impact do you have? Over to you two. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. We're going to present the City of Lyon in a few words. First, so the City of Lyon is a regional capital. We have about 500,000 inhabitants within a metropolis of about 2 million inhabitants. And we have quite a young population, and our scope of cities with jurisdiction is quite broad, whereas not as broad as the metropolis, but we deal with nurseries, kindergartens, primary school, sports, culture, public lighting, municipal police, building permits, green spaces, and support to trade. Our mayor is Grégory Doucet, so it comes from the Green Party, and it's been elected in 2020. The climate change is already a very big issue for Lyon because we have already the first signs of climate change regarding mostly heat waves. And if we do nothing, we know that our climate will be close to Alger at the end of the century. One of our biggest vulnerability is the heat waves. And we have already known the warmest decade from 2011, and we have been hit by heat waves very hard, especially in 2022 and 2023, with very high temperature during summer. So that's a very big issue for us. So the impact of climate change in Lyon are very numerous, especially on our natural ecosystems, water quality, but also on health for all our citizens, because our city hasn't been built for such temperatures. And we know, for example, that our housing hasn't been created for this kind of extreme temperature. We have also more intense rainfalls. We have increased natural risks as well. And we have many impacts on daily lives, such as on vulnerable people, such as elderly or young people, but also our economic activities are affected. So Lyon has been committed to climate from quite a long time ago. From 2008, the city has signed the European Covenant of Mayors, and since then we work quite very closely with Europe. For example, we have been competing for the European label regarding climate and energy actions, and we just have had the 5 stars label, which we are very proud of very recently. And so our target is to be neutral by 2030 regarding our emissions. And that's why we have made this plan that you are seeing on the screen, the Climate, Air, Energy Plan. And it means that by 2030, we will be neutral regarding our emission. And for this, we are working for our partners, external partners and inhabitants, but also we have quite a broad action regarding our own administration and our civil servants. So that's why we have launched this Convention Citoyenne pour le Climat des Agents. Why? Because we wanted to implicate the civil servants which were not part of our project. It was more an internal work between experts, and we wanted to share it. And it was also part of our administration's project, which has been launched with the new mandate in 2020. And these administration's projects wanted all the civil servants to participate to the new rules of our administration. And one of the topics which has been chosen by the civil servants was the convention about climate. So for these, 74 municipal employees have been selected through a sortition. And for these, we have proposed a program which has lasted 1 year. And this program was dealing with an awareness raising program regarding ecological transition, and also different sessions in order that the 74 municipal employees propose new targets in order to go deeper into the ecological transition. So we wanted a new model of cooperation because we wanted through these 74 persons to be fully engaged. And for this, we knew that the habitual conferences could not be used. That's why we have used many different ways of having them happy to collaborate with, for example, visits, talks with experts. We met different partners, especially also outside our administration. And we had also lots of insight from external experts from outside the city of Lyon. So this has led us to produce a guide of 17 new proposals, which has been given to the mayor. And we had a big witness this day with the presence of Cyril Dion, which is a poet, filmmaker as well, and was quite a big influence in France. He was there to support this kind of initiative. And during this day, the day we gave this report, we saw how much the mayor was very touched by these initiatives, as well as the senior management who discovered how important and serious the proposals were. So these proposals were of two types. There were two questions being asked by the administration and the councillors. One was, what would be an exemplary administration in terms of practices for successful ecological transition? And the other one, how can public service continuity be ensured during heat waves while protecting the health of employees? And at the top of these, the 74 employees propose 12 items, which were of their own initiative, regarding working conditions at the City of Lyon, water use in the city, endocrine disruptors, biodiversity, and solidarity. Now, Clémence will tell you everything about what's happened next.
Yeah, thank you. So we heard well, we have our first step was the convention and all the awareness raising program. And our second step was about the instruction, and after that it's the execution of all the action and proposals. I need to precise that we build all this project all along the adventure. The first idea was just to create a convention, and we were very aware that the most important things was not to deceive and build a trust between all the public servants, and to execute really all the proposals. So on the follow-up to the 3CA, the convention, we had an analysis with the manager, and we put the manager in responsibility. They have the obligation to analyze all the proposals, and we had the support from the manager in the operational department in coordination and decision making. And all during the adventure and the instruction, we put some feedback with the manager and all the deputy for ecological transition and the executive manager. Oh, okay. No. So our terms and condition was to empowering agent with knowledge and trust, and in the result we succeed. We have a very good result on this. Like said Isabel, we had 17 action from the convention, and they did this because we built a very trust relationship with them, and with the guarantee that we engage some experts to the program, and we have the legitimate all the people to take some time on their work to engage and to participate during the convention with the support of their manager. That was very important, and it's the third term and condition, involve manager as key player in the success of the project, and it's very important for us. And the second term, it was to provide a flexible, agile, and democratic framework. And about that, in the results, effectively, the people, the public servants, choose all the thematics and all the public politics that they want to work, and to adjust, and it was very a very succeeding result, because all the things on the 17th action, only 2 can't see the day, and so it's a very good results for us with this convention. So the participation is first the key player for the beginning to the end. The methodology to analyze the feasibility was very collaborative, with 2 types of participants: the expert, internal and external, but also the volunteers of the convention. In conclusion, we have 20 departments involved, 15 previous employees from the convention, and 20 new employees of the city being volunteers in this process. And the decision taking was given to the senior management and to the councillor, but the people engaged in the 3CA were also invited during the presentation, and they are very part of the adventure from the start to the end for this adventure. So now we like we said, we have multiple events in order to share the decision, make the 3CA visible, and to the rest of the civil servants and administration, and out of the city too. So the next step for us now, it's the celebration of the 3CA and its concrete action. So we have the celebration in the 5th of January, and the topic is the engagement of the stakeholders along the way and through times. So it's the engagement and times that we don't have anymore now. And with this, for this we have two guests: Adrien Klett, a novel writer, and Nicolas Fiolaine, a researcher in social psychology. And during this end of the year and in 2026, we have an agenda to implement the different proposals with the managing team. And we will follow up all the concrete and the execution of the actions with our climate plan until the end of the mandates of our councillor in 2026. So it's a big time for us now. We have to follow up and guarantee all the application of the proposals.
Thank you so much, Clémence. Thank you so much, Isabelle. It's really interesting that you've ended up on the point about follow-up, and I'm going to pick that up in a minute, because I mean that's always the problem just generally around assemblies, all that work that goes in, and then how do you embed it? So thank you so much, and we'll bring you back into the conversation in a minute. That was really, really fascinating. So we're going to go to a completely different institution now, which is universities, which obviously I have a strong interest in. I'm going to be joined by Chloe Santoro, who works in the same research group as Emily, who was going to be joining us. And so I'm really, thank you, Chloe, at stepping in at the last minute. We've agreed to do this more as a sort of conversational, as a more conversational part of the presentations, because we can't expect Chloe to suddenly put a presentation together. So Chloe, can you tell me a little bit about how many universities you think are actually doing these kind of using citizens assembly technology for climate?
Well, Graham, if it's okay for you, I can share my screen to show you some material. It will maybe be easier to talk about it. So just 1 second, please. I'm choosing.
Is she a co-host? Just checking. I didn't realize you were going to show something, Chloe.
Oh, well, does it work?
Yep.
All right. So
you're not going to show all of these,
very shortly. This is all right. So you have here the UniDelib network. I will briefly talk about. First of all, I'm sorry Emily couldn't be there, so I will just present very shortly the network, and then you can ask me anything you like, and if I can answer, I will.
Can you show it on full screen or not, Chloe?
Probably. Wait a minute.
At the moment we can see.
All right.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
So UniDelib is a network that Emily Franquiel started in 2022, I'd say, with the UNIL Assembly of the Transition. Then it grew a lot bigger. We have now 30-something universities participating in this network, either because they already had a deliberative process, or because they currently are having one or are preparing a new one. There I tried to represent this on a map that you can see represents a lot of European processes, actually a lot of French ones, and a few ones in the United States. Also, you see that a lot of them are already finished. Like in green, you have the ended processes. And they also have very different formats and sometimes objectives also, because you have mixed processes involving students, but also staff, teachers. Sometimes it's only staff, sometimes it's only students. Some of them are very big, like in the UPEC, we have a huge process every year with several hundreds of students. And in other areas, like in Nantes, for example, it's 20 people or 24, I think, with staff and students mixed together. So it really depends, actually. This is interesting to try to have a special representation of that, and also to be able to identify the differences, who is experimenting what kind of process exactly. And there you only have very obvious differences, but then you have, I would say, subtler or finer differences that you can try to identify. For example, the recruitment, how are the students or staff or participants recruited? Is it sortition? What do you call sortition, actually? Because sometimes it's like half of the university received an email, like in Amsterdam, and then people apply if they are interested, and then you have sortition on that group of volunteers. So obviously it's not sortition as if you really would pick some people randomly at the beginning. So yeah, this is the list we currently have, but it's actually not accurate anymore, because it needs to be updated. This is the first problem we encounter, is that we don't, for the moment, we don't have a central place where everyone could add information on the ongoing processes. This would be a very good thing, that we managed to organize a central website with a map, for example, maybe an interactive one, and also a place where we can indicate the publications, for example, who is doing what, who is going to observe what process. Because, well, I will maybe end with this element. I would say we have maybe 3 types of objectives in these processes. One is educational. The students especially learn through participating how to deliberate, how to invent proposals collectively, and involve in the life of their university. The second type of objectives would be political. Obviously, some processes have this purpose to really bring some kind of empowerment through the university community, and especially students. Are they really able to get involved in the decisions? This is very often the complicated aspect, because the proposals are very often numerous and very cherry-picking friendly, I would say. So yeah, we can discuss that also if you're interested in this aspect. And I would say the third objective, and this one is maybe for me maybe the most important, or it would be important, but we don't develop that enough, is the scientific one, because those processes are happening since, as you saw, a few years only, and it's very new. It's happening within universities, so you have research teams very close to them, even if they are not always involved in the organization, but you have researchers around, and it would be extremely interesting to be able to really have a researchers network around those objects and to share information, to share research material, observations, also to be able to mutually accompany the processes. For example, I'm currently involved in the design or accompanying a process in Lausanne. Very interesting, and also we need observers, obviously, during the process, and we need feedback. It's very precious to have feedback from other person, either experts of deliberation or climate assemblies, or experts of organizing one. What did they do in their own structure? How did it work? This is I think this has to be developed in the next months and years, a way really to get in touch and to work together to produce research on those fascinating objects. Well, I think I'm finished now.
So I
can
think that's so. Can you go keep that on? Keep the one up, the one on
This
that
one?
you had, the that one. I mean,
Yeah.
what's really striking, Chloe, is so there's been a lot of, as you say, there's been a lot of activity in the last sort of
Yeah.
3 or 4 years, but what people are doing seems to be quite different, and it strikes me like just comparing what you've done in UPEC, where you involve hundreds of students, and I think there's a kind of educational and political kind of rationale behind that. Then you compare it to somewhere like Nantes, which has a small assembly of I think about 24 staff and students, but they're actually kind of part of the official decision making. It's actually part of the constitution of the university that body exists. And it strikes me there's so many different types of things happening here that in some ways it would be a mistake to just think, oh, they're all the same thing, basically. Yeah, it is such a diversity.
Yeah, and I think we need to how to say that, to enrich the network from this diversity. And for now, sometimes it seems difficult to embrace it really, because you somehow have the impression that the same process would be reproduced again and again in different universities. It's not at all the case, but it's kind of difficult to make this really visible, and this is why I think a map could be a good tool, but also I don't know, several tables that we can all look and explore in more details.
Yeah. My own university is just starting an assembly, as you know, and we've had a big
Yes.
debate about, because we want to involve students and staff, but of course students, there's like 20 or 30,000 students. There's 1,000 academics and 1,000 professional services, and then there's about another 1,000 contractors who work in the university, and trying to figure out. And so we've actually ended up having 4 different sortition processes for those different groups. It can get incredibly complicated in those kind of complex environments, I think. But do you see an advantage or disadvantage of trying to do it as a whole community versus trying to just do it with students? Do you think they have different virtues?
Well, it's difficult to say. Of course, the huge UPEC assembly is just students, and this has one advantage, is that the students experiment this very strange process together, and they are all beginners. They don't know anything about it before they start. When you have a mixed assembly, it's very different, because some people within this assembly know very well, maybe not deliberative processes, but usually the administration in the university, how things work, who is in charge of what, etc. And so they have a huge power when you compare it to students who barely know where they have class on this day, maybe when they arrive at least. Yeah, and one of the objective also of those processes, I think, is to bring this knowledge to students faster, actually. What is this structure they are in, and they won't stay so long in it, a few years, so they don't have the same legitimacy also as teachers or staff to decide, but still they represent the huge majority of the university community, if you want to call it that. So yeah, I think
that's a really complex situation for a university, isn't it? That some people are more transient, some people are permanent. I think that's a really, really interesting problem. Chloe,
for example, in Lausanne, they are currently trying to bring really people within the assembly who actually have decisional power. So they used sortition, but also they chose some people on purpose so that those people can directly act afterwards because they have power, and so it's maybe less democratic, but then it could be more effective to choose to recruit the assembly this way. So I think it depends what you want to accomplish with it.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. So could you stop sharing the screen now, because then
Sure.
I can. So we were planning on bringing everybody together, but actually I think we don't want to have the time, and I think it'd actually be really good to. Actually, no, let's just bring together just for one question, actually, and then we'll break up. Could you bring the other three back in? So we haven't got a huge amount of time because my timekeeping is terrible. But one thing I would like to ask all of you is about how well the assembly has been received by the institution. Because usually what happens is my experience is there's a small number of people who are really excited about this and who drive the process, who understand the process. And I'm just just interested to understand, how has it been received within the wider institution, not just those kind of activist people. So Emmeline, because you're working in an industry which has almost no experience of public participation at all. So how has this been received by people working in both the pension you're working with, but the wider industry?
Okay, so I'll keep it quick because I could.
You could talk about this all day.
Okay, so firstly, I'm the Pensioenfonds Detailhandel, which is the pension scheme that commissioned the project. Is actually a very small team of people, and they do a lot of outsourcing of their activities. And the team of people who are running the pension scheme were completely committed to it, and they were brilliant to work with. And they took it really seriously. They had a culture prior to the project of listening to members, wanting to listen to members. This just enriched and strengthened a direction of travel they were already on anyway, into something that's quite new and exciting, and they found it brilliant. And that was just joyful. The industry as a whole is more complicated picture and much more mixed. And I do find that, obviously some people across the industry really see a huge potential in it. Other people are much more concerned about, and cautious about it. One of the strengths of introducing a deliberative mini-public, I think, is actually the fact that they do function as auxiliary, supplementary institutions as they've been implemented in public governance. And of course, there are debates about that, but fundamentally, most of the practice has been in that way, and that makes them easier to think about, because that's where I've argued about positioning. That brings you something extra into trustee governance. It gives you an understanding you would not normally have, and you can make better decisions. I'm going to stop there.
Really interesting. I mean, Clémence, Isabelle, how obviously you had a mandate from higher level authorities, but how has this been received by the wider public authority, by your wider set of colleagues? Because you're obviously very committed to it. I'm just interested to know the conversations you've been having and the challenges you've had.
I think they've been very surprised, it's true that this project was at the top of the project of administration, and it has been voted by the civil servants in their whole. That's why it was at the top of the list. But I think they've been surprised how well it worked from the beginning. And this was the reason why the chief of the top manager said, you are going to be helped with consultants from outside because it's becoming so big that you will need help. So we were endeavored by lots of trust. At the same time, they were very surprised by the success of this initiative.
That's really good. Did you want to add anything, Clémence?
Yeah, someone talk about this like a democratic bang, and I think it's a wonderful expression to
A democratic bang.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also about all the people, the other of the administration, we have a lot of allies who are in other cooperation initiatives. So it was a lot of surprise how that grew up, but we have a lot of support in turn and in the organization.
I'm just kind of interested on the public authority one. I think there's a really interesting additional thing, which I think might happen in our university as well, is that you actually create relationships between people who would not normally work together. So, you know,
Yes,
because we're
that's
very,
right.
very siloed in universities or in public administrations, and suddenly you're developing those relationships, and that must have been quite powerful.
Yes, especially because all the climate actions were not very well known by all the civil servants. So for us, it was really a big aim to share what is a climate plan and how you as a civil servant can add your energy, your ideas in this process. And
Okay.
we discovered that not so many people knew about what we were doing regarding climate action.
Okay, that's really interesting. That is really interesting because we're in the bubble, aren't we? So we kind of know, but yeah, that's right. And Chloe, I'm kind of interested. You're working with a large scale assembly within your university of students. How is that sort of, and it's been going on now for a number of years. How has that been, how has that affected the sort of decision making or at all within the university? Or are other people in the university uncomfortable about it, or is it seen as a valuable part of the university?
Well, I would say it's a bit paradoxical because actually the direction of the university seems to be very happy about this initiative, and it gives, you know, visibility to this university. It's almost a piece of advertising now, I would say. Sorry if I'm being too
No,
critical. It's
it's
just
fine.
it's
It's
not
fine.
my goal, but yeah. But in the same time, the students are kind of frustrated because they have the feeling that not a lot of their proposals are actually, you know, really applied and experimented, or a few ones have been, but yeah, they don't have a choice to participate in the UPEC. This is maybe very special in comparison to the other processes that they have to participate. And also they produce, as they are very numerous, they produce a lot of proposals every year. This year we have currently 140 proposals, and how to be sure that even one or two of them will be really implemented. For now, it's not. We have no guarantee. I know it's very often the case, also in civic processes, but this would be my answer. It's very the process is very welcomed in the university, but the culture, the democratic culture that should go with it is sometimes not here yet.
Yeah, no, I've got you. Okay, look, thank you. So you're gonna have a chance to hear from some more from both from the presenters, depending upon what breakout room you choose now. But I'd like to thank Chloe and Emmeline and Clémence and Isabelle for just introducing us to the kind of work that's been going on in these different sectors using assembly technology. What we're planning to do now is to have 3 breakout rooms, one which is going to be focusing on broadly the private sector, but Emmeline will be there being able to talk some more about the work she's been doing, but also thinking more broadly about private sector. One on the public sector, which will be Clémence and Isabelle, who will be focusing on, how could this be rolled out within other public bodies. And then with Chloe and myself, we'll do one on universities and thinking more about how we can develop practice within those spaces. So you will get a choice as to which one of those groups you would like to go into. And what we're going to do is think about the opportunities and challenges in that space, what we as a community, how we could see progress developing in this space. What would it mean to, how can we start seeing more of these sorts of initiatives happening? And particularly what role can Knoca play in trying to take this forward? There'll be someone from the Knoca team in each one of the groups, and we'll make sure that the questions are there. So listen, as ever, I'm sure it was the same in your breakout group, but my breakout group was really interesting. There were some 3 or 4 people who had actually had done climate assemblies in universities, actually probably about 5 or 6 actually, and then some others who were thinking about doing it, and another person, others just trying to think about what it means. So it's a very very interesting conversation. I'm sure it was the same in others, but let's try and hear back from what was being said in the others about the sort of opportunities and challenges, etc. And I promised that I would ask Ines to do this first for the universities one, because I know she has to leave slightly early. So can we spotlight Ines? Ines, so do you want to give us a flavour of what was being said and the kind of opportunities and challenges as you saw it from doing this within universities?
Put the light
I thought you were running away then. I thought you were
No,
leaving.
but I'm so much in the light. This is awful. I'm not an angel. All right. So we had, I would say, we started by, or Graham asked, what was the special things or results, or what surprised you in those assemblies that have been done in universities? And there were 2 points mainly, is that it's really great to see a very heterogeneous group. What you also see in a normal mini public within a country, you would also see in university, as you have students, you have staff, you have management people, and so on. And that they, in the end, are not so far away from each other as you might think, especially when it comes down to sustainability or climate issues. So they have, maybe there is some more radicals than others, but it's in the end not so much difference in what they want to do. This was quite interesting to hear for me. And really this variety of people spending time together and building up a community is also quite important, because university has lots of problems right now, but they are not only here to make profit or to get projects with money, but to build communities and to teach. And then the pedagogical effect of an assembly is important not only for students, but for everybody participating in it. And it could be, again, something like a political space that is opened, which has been before at universities like 30, 40 years ago when Graham and I were young. And now not anymore, but maybe this is the opportunity to really discuss again, frankly, and have some democratic tools. Then we came to challenges. Of course, it's money and it's commitment. But what I really liked, and this was one result of work I did, Graham, with you, what is really important is to have a follow-up plan. That's what we learned in the last years. If you have a follow-up plan, then even if the commitment is not so strong in the beginning of the top level or of the management of the university, they have somehow to follow it. And the plan can be either some working groups being implemented, workshops, or if this is not working as you plan, Graham, really have communities, community opening or going into activism, I would say even. And also other follow-up processes were there in Germany and in Amsterdam, which were quite interesting. And then how can you motivate people to participate if you can't pay them? Well, if you can pay at least those that have no full-time contract, such as part-time people, contractors or students. Otherwise, it's meals, it's certificates, it's nice settings. And also the sortition has been done different ways. And it's very important to choose it the way that it reaches a lot of people, because you don't have people with so much of time at universities. And the duration is from 1.5 days up to 5 days, all in between we heard in the different assemblies. That's it in a nutshell. Thank you. But please add if I forgot something.
Ines, that was great. That was a great summary. But I think what was also really for me that was pulled out was this issue of how, particularly for students, but also for staff and for professional people in professional services, is the way this can really contribute to pedagogy. That this is actually part of what universities should be doing, and I think it's I think that's a really interesting development. Thank you so much, Ines. Pleasure to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. So it's a real pleasure. Do we have somebody from the private sector group, from Emmeline and Thomas's group? Was anyone taking notes on that at all and wants to feed back from there? Is it George?
Yeah, that's me.
Hello, George. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good. So give us some flavour of your conversations.
Yeah, so we had a really interesting breakout group, actually. It was good to see 2 people from aviation represented who want to run assemblies in the aviation sector. Things we talked about were the similarities and barriers with pension schemes being quite complex, and educating participants to a good enough level to make well-informed decisions, and how that was reflected somewhat in the aviation sector, where the solutions needed are quite technical. It's within the context of climate science, which itself is quite technical, and engaging participants who aren't necessarily that well informed on the climate or technologies, and somehow getting them to the point where they can make really well informed decisions that benefit everyone, and trying to find that balance and trying to get that education level to a good enough place in quite a short time. We also talked about incentives and how that was often a barrier. Certainly in our latest assembly that Safe Landing has run, we were limited quite severely by budget, and that meant that the people that put themselves forward to be selected and then were selected tended to come from a certain social demographic that are much more likely and easier to come along, considering they're only paid £30 for the day, which was our budget. And then to get people from vocations that were not necessarily engaged as much, or found it harder to take time off work to do it, were having to be paid a little bit more. And then it brought up ethical questions of, well, do we then disclose that to the rest of the participants, that other people are getting paid more than others, and how and why? And the final thing we talked about was what Knoca could do, and it was a common theme in our breakout group that the organising and infrastructure around assemblies is fairly well understood through programmes by People Powered and elsewhere, but the design of the exercises themselves within the assembly is quite lacking. And that's something myself and Frederic, particularly in our breakout group, would really benefit from. Understand how you actually design exercises to take people on that journey throughout the assembly. The selection and recruitment and independent advisory groups are kind of okay, but it's the exercises themselves we could probably do with training sessions on, was something we concluded.
That's really great, George. Actually, your point about your point about materials is well made. The point about the differential payment is something that we're coming across in my university, because we're paying students but we're not paying staff, you know what I mean? And it's this kind of, and we've been very upfront about it, actually, so but it is a really interesting question. So thanks for that, George. And then last but not least, from the public bodies group, from Mark and Isabel and Clements. I don't know. Oh, Isabel, it's you speaking, is it?
Yes.
Hello again. I just love your wallpaper, so I'm just very happy when you're on there.
That's the office's one.
Ah, right, okay.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
some of the questions which came along. First, it was how this idea happened to grow within the city of Lyon and how the mayor and the top management get into it. We explained that, in fact, it came from the civil servants themselves through the project of administration, and it's because it became such a great idea and with lots of enthusiasm that the mayor and the top management came towards us. Another question was about the engagement of the people working with us, the 74 civil servants, which kind of commitment they had to work with us for one year. And so through this contract they had with us, and we hardly anybody stepped out of it, which was really, really interesting. There was another question about the silo within the organization and how did it work to break it. So we did that. We did it through the confidence that the civil servants acquired and the knowledge they acquired, and because we had time to do it. That was very important, that the administration allowed the civil servants to spend every month half a day with us. That was really, really important. Another question was dealing about what's next. It is, of course, the implementation of the proposals, and Clémence and I are going to be very aware of giving results along the way to all the civil servants of Lyon. And also there is a question of the memoir of this experience. So we are thinking of a report which won't be an administrative report, and we try to find another way to communicate and to give all this knowledge. And we are thinking of collecting lots of testimonies of people who have been participated to this adventure. I think that's my summary. But
no, that's really interesting. I think this issue of how you collect how you kind of keep memory going, I think is really interesting. And we're thinking in our assembly of actually trying to think about graphics and art and things like that as things that we can just keep around the university somehow. So just very quickly then, Isabel, could I be joined by the other presenters just very quickly before we end? So I just want to, if you had a very quick reflection, so have we got Emmeline and Chloe, if they're still here? So any sort of parting reflection, having spent this sort of couple of hours thinking about assemblies within organizations, do you have any sort of passing reflections on what you've heard and what we've been talking about? Chloe?
Yeah, very quickly, I would just say what you asked, Graham, about paying people and how this can strangely recreate some kind of inequality. I think it's actually the main difficulty and also interest of organizing deliberative assemblies in universities, or also in other type of hierarchical structures, is that you have power relationships and you have very different situations. I often saw the contrary happening. That is, we have no money, so nobody gets paid, but the staff is actually paid because this is taken on their
job.
Yeah, exactly. So they are paid and the students are not. And this is, I think, a bigger problem than your problem, being that the students are privileged. Well, very, very good. I would say this is better in this sense.
Chloe, I completely agree with you, Chloe. I was just saying it was just very interesting that some of the staff didn't want to participate because they weren't getting paid. So that was the interesting thing. So yeah.
But also what was said about the meals, or you sometimes have other ways to give people something they are interested in. For example, I was discussing with the people of Lausanne of the PhD students, and they are extremely difficult to recruit for this kind of assembly because they have really no time, and also even when they are paid to give a PhD thesis in
give lecture.
3-4 years, so they don't have time to lose of this duration. And I propose that they actually, if it's possible, they pay them in time, because I know with COVID, I myself had this possibility to add a few months to my PhD contract because of the pandemics. So this can be interesting for some special profiles to pay them with more time, for example. Yeah.
Thanks, Chloe. Just very quickly, Emmeline, do you take anything away from this conversations?
Really similar point to what Chloe mentioned, actually, which is about the hierarchy and the differentiation of people in organizations. So when you think about it in the public sector, it's almost like these are the citizens, and of course we know there are different, a certain degree of representation is required, but basically they're thought about as a group, a single kind of homogenous group. And then when you look at organizations, you see these hierarchies, and you're talking it's really interesting to think about how you can get good representation, what kind of incentives you can get to people across the board. But another way to think about it also is in terms of which we talked about in our group, George was talking about it as well, is we're talking about stake. George was mentioning about some people having a longer stake, more of a stake in an organization. They stay at the types people that's particular levels stay longer in an organization than those in other levels. In my pension scheme context, we've got people got a bit more money than others, and therefore the consequences are more kind of impactful for some groups rather than others. So it's not just about representation; it's actually about kind of stake in the long term.
No, we thought it was hard enough doing these things with just ordinary populations. Trying to do them inside organisations generates a whole new set of challenges. So, Clémence, Isabelle, did either of you have anything you wanted to add just before we finish?
Well, I think the most important thing for me is to make sure that the proposals that the people make will be implemented, so that the trust won't be broken. And that's something that I share with Chloe when she said there were lots and lots of proposals from the students. And what about what is done next? I think it's so important, because the National Convention in France was such a kind of distrust that I think that this could kill all the conventions, is these are not implemented in a short term or middle term way.
That's great, Isabelle. And Clémence, final word from you?
I agree, of course, with Isabelle. And in addition, I think for me, what's important now is how we can allow our colleagues to go during their work's time in other initiatives for the community, and engage themselves for big topics, and that it's a very important thing for me when we have less time and when we are we deal with a lot of challenging and first the climate change.
Yeah, and it's really interesting that you kind of gave people time within the institution to do that. I think that was really important. Okay, look, thank you everybody. That was I found that a really fascinating call. It's opening up a sort of new space, I think, within climate assembly practice. Once again, I'd really like to thank Emmeline, I'd like to thank Chloe, I'd like to thank Isabelle and thank Clémence, and also the team, Emily, Thomas and Mark behind the scenes, who have kind of kept this all rolling today. Just one advert, we have in the calendar for next year, we've got a learning call on the Dutch Citizens Assembly on climate. I think that one of the reasons to come to that is because they have probably done an assembly in the most polarized of political contexts, with they've managed to get through 3 governments while they've been doing the assembly. So I think that's going to be a very interesting conversation about how they dealt with polarization, both with outside the assembly and inside it. So please stick that in your diary. And it's been a real pleasure, always a pleasure to bring everyone together. That was a really interesting couple of hours. And for all of those who are doing the work in this space, wish you all the best. Okay, take care.